Hey everyone, and welcome to my next video tutorial. So in this one we're going to be looking at how to make a scenic base. Alright, so what we're going to be looking at is making a forest scenic base. So the look that I'm going for here with these stormtroopers who are from the Star Wars Legion game. As a fan of Star Wars myself, and entering a competition soon where it calls for competitors to enter something that they wouldn't usually paint, hence why I'm going with something non-GW. And yeah, I chose these guys. I thought it'd be really cool to do a scene that's kind of inspired by Endor, the forest planet. So that's kind of what I'm going for here. So in this series there's going to be a few parts. In this one, what we're going to be doing is just planning out the base a bit and just kind of gluing down some of the initial objects that are going to go on the base to kind of make up most of the composition. So as you can see, I've already kind of mocked up what I'm trying to achieve. A bit of a composition to start with. So some of the materials that I'm using already are these pine bark chips. You would have seen them if you've seen some of my other videos of creating bases. I really like using them because once they're all painted up, they look a lot like rocks, which is really nice. And they're just nice and lightweight, easy to use, easy to glue together, and to stack them up and build them up into whatever kind of form you want. And then using some other natural products, just some sticks and twigs and things that I found in the garden. Yeah, you can find there's quite a wealth of materials that you can use in your own backyard. So we're going to go ahead and show you how we're going to put this together. Okay, so to begin with, what I've got in front of me is my resin plinth. So this one's from Secret Weapon Miniatures. They tend to be a little bit bowed sometimes when they cast them. So I have sanded that down a little bit. It's not perfect, not perfectly straight, but you don't have to do that. It was just what I wanted to do, just try and get a little bit more uniform. And your miniatures, so in this instance I've got my two stormtroopers, which are going to go on the base. You can use whatever size plinth you want, really. If this video inspires you to do a forest kind of scenic base, I've got a couple of other examples here. There's a smaller one from Secret Weapon Miniatures as well. These black resin ones from Dark Messiah bases, which are really cool as well. So to begin with, I should mention as well, I'm going to keep these guys close by because as I start to build the base and putting things together, I want to make sure that I'm checking the composition as I go along and making sure that everything's kind of working as I start to glue stuff down. So because the resin is quite smooth, we're going to have potential problems with the glue adhering to this. So the first thing that I want to do is just take some sandpaper and just rough up that surface a little bit. Alright, and that should be pretty good. It's roughed up the surface a bit, given it a bit of texture, which will help the glue to adhere to that. If you didn't do that, obviously you're going to have problems potentially with stuff not gluing down properly, which you don't really want. So I'd recommend doing that first. Okay, so now I'm going to start gluing down some of these bits of the pine bark to start to form this sort of rock formation at the back here. For the, I guess you'd call him a sergeant. So the stormtrooper at the back there. And just kind of arranging them without gluing them first, just to try and get the right kind of composition happening. And so then when you've got the bits arranged how you are wanting to glue them down, the trick is just to kind of try and, in whatever way you can, just try and remember how it all goes together. Whatever system you kind of want to use for that. So let's get these guys out of the way. I'll probably just leave them there and then glue one at a time. So what I'm using is hot glue. I find that it adheres really nicely, but it also is just really quick. It sets quick and holds it nicely. And I mean, the benefit with that is that means you can move on to the next bits sooner. I mean, you could use PVA glue, wood glue, or something like that. But if you do use PVA glue, it means that you've got a longer drying time, and the problem with that is that the whole base could end up kind of falling apart while you're trying to work on the next part of it, which might not be ideal. So there's the initial layer done, and then just doing a little double check, making sure it all fits together nicely. Looks pretty good. And then the tree will kind of come out from there. So yeah. Sometimes you get this problem with excess glue kind of bulging out the side, but if you just kind of clean that up a bit, and we're eventually going to go through and fill up some of these gaps with milliput, and then there's going to be all sorts of other sand and gravel and other smaller rocks and things like that are going to go on here anyway, so it'll be covered up, so that's not going to be an issue. And so just to check that everything fits together nice enough. If you make a mistake, it's not too hard to kind of pull those rocks off, probably with a bit of force. But yeah, I'm quite happy with how that's looking. And then we've got the tree going roughly there, keeping it off to the side. Just adds a nice extra little element to the base. And yeah, it could be quite cool at the end. Cool, so moving on to the next part, which will be attaching this. And we're not just going to hot glue that down there, because if we handle it later, or if worst case scenario, if I drop it, drop the base, that could easily snap off. So what I'm actually going to do to give that a bit more sturdiness is just to actually drill into it and pin it with a bit of rod. So drilling inside the trunk. And then I'm taking my little bit of that rod there. I'm just gonna test fit it a bit. we're just going to super glue that in there. So that's ready on that end. And then you're just positioning it where it's going to go. You can even kind of push down on the wood there, and then it gives you an indicator of where you're going to start drilling into the pine there. It may go with the length of it, it might need to go into the resin a little bit, but that's fine. And then just test that as well. Looks pretty good. Again, you know, you've got a bit of a gap there, but that's fine. I may even just drill it a bit deeper because it might not be going all the way in. The resin's a bit harder than the wood. Let's just push the drill bit back. Okay. That should fit a bit better now. A little bit better. Cool. So before I glue that in, just going to do one last check for composition. Oh, there he goes. Alright, cool. Quite happy with that. So, I'll just use a bit of super glue for that. Just glue it in. Decent amount in there, because the thing about working with wood is because it's a very porous surface, it's going to absorb a lot of your glue. So, it doesn't hurt to just use a little bit more. And it will just compensate for what you're going to lose that gets soaked up in the wood. Cool. So, there we go. Just get a bit more blue tack on that guy so it doesn't fall off again. There you go. Cool, so that's, yeah, getting the main kind of body of your scenic base started. So in the next part, I'm going to go and just add a bit more detail to this. As I mentioned at one point, that I'm going to be using a bit of milliput just to fill up some of these gaps. Add some extra little details and stuff after that. And then we'll look at kind of just refining a little bit more. Yeah, so thanks so much for watching. Again, I really appreciate your support. I hope that this video will be helpful for anyone who's looking at making a scenic base. So yeah, this series I should mention. So yeah, so follow along in the later parts as well. And I hope that you'll get some use out of this. So yeah, thanks.